Now, Owen Jones, author of The Establishment and How They Get Away With It, and columnist for The Guardian, and the commentator and former radio talk show host Jon Gaunt, who joined UKIP last year. Thanks very much to you both. Jon, when you hear it being called a protest vote, UKIP as a protest vote, what do you think?
Well, undoubtedly it was a protest, but let's face it, to ordinary working class people there's a lot to protest about at the moment, so it's more than a protest vote. Don't think and don't get lost in this Westminster London bubble that this is just a protest. I said after the European election it wasn't just a protest like it normally is at European elections. There's something actually happening in the country, Emily, and the further you get outside of the M25 the more you see it, which is why the most important result last night was not in Clacton, but it was the result up north where Labour really got their backsides tanned.
And this is something we've seen twice now in a month or in 2 months, that the working class seem to have deserted Labour in Scotland for the SNP and they've deserted Labour in the north of England for UKIP. What is going wrong with Labour's strategy?
Well, it was a massive blow in the face, let's not forget, for the entire political elite. It is a walking, talking disaster at the moment. It fails to represent the needs and aspirations of millions of people. Partly what's happened, of course, let's not forget, in Haywood, is the collapse of the Tory vote. And let's not forget, the Tories used to win in the north. They used to win in places like Liverpool, in Sheffield, in Manchester for that matter. They're seen as so toxic a force because of what happened in the 80s.
Yeah, but come on, we're talking about a Labour heartland that won by 600 votes. I mean,
absolutely. And that is a damning indictment of a failure of the Labour leadership to inspire the people that party was set up to represent. Look at the situation facing this country.
It's also...
let me just finish, John.
Look at those towns like Rotherham, for example, have been in power for too long. In my home city... No, in my home city, well, you're used to it. In my home city of Coventry, where we've had the Labour Party in power for so long, apart from a brief period, there's similar kind of feelings as there are in Rotherham and some of those northern towns. That's what's happened. Don't be deluded. It isn't about the collapse of the Conservative vote, it's the collapse of working class people supporting Labour.
But are you saying the Conservatives have failed just as badly then?
I mean, the whole political... That's where he's right.
No, it is.
The whole political establishment.
That's exactly my point. It's the damning failure of this political elite to represent the interests of working people. John, come on, you've had a long say now. This is a situation facing working people in this country. The longest fall in their living standards since the 1870s, when Benjamin Disraeli was Prime Minister. 5 million people stuck on social housing waiting lists because New Labour and the Conservatives
So this wouldn't have happened without a recession then? I mean, do you think this was happening through the 97, through the Blair years, under the surface, or is this all from recession?
It's all started with Blair, didn't it? It all started with this whole idea of how they danced to the tune of the tabloids, particularly the Sun newspaper and the Mail. And what's actually happened is people have realised then with the expenses scandal that the journalists, the media elite are all in bed, metaphorically, sometimes literally, with the political establishment. And what's happening is people are saying they want an alternative to that. And what Nigel Farage has done brilliantly, whether you agree with them or not, has played to that, a bit like the Tea Party tried to play to it.
Yeah, but it might just be that they want different solutions. It might just be they want a cap on immigration. You're putting, you're doing the Rorschach drawing, whatever you read into it. They might just be saying what they say on the doorstep.
What's fascinating, if you look at the views of UKIP voters and look at the polls about what they actually believe, the majority of UKIP voters want public ownership of rail and energy. They want a statutory living wage in law, because this is a country where most people in poverty are in work, earning their poverty day after day. They support higher taxes on the rich, but let's not forget, what UKIP actually, their leadership represent, is the exact opposite.
What they want mostly
is this. They want to get out of UKIP. They want to get out of the European Union. That's first and foremost, because that's at the bottom cause for every single problem.
John,
when we go on to immigration and when we go on to what Nigel Farage has said about that, of course that chimes with people, because the clue is in the title. Owen, you interrupt me once more, please. The National Health Service, not the World Health Service. What's wrong with a points-based system, the same as Australia, and the same as the United States? That's all that Nigel Farage has said. And most people watching this programme, or most people on Facebook or on Twitter, when they react to this, agree with that. What is the point of allowing people in with TB or HIV? It's going to cost us an absolute...
The point, by the way, on the European Union is a really important point, and I speak as someone who supports a referendum on EU membership to give the British people the democratic right to determine...
Your party doesn't.
Whether or not the EU...
will not give a
referendum. He's telling us what he thinks,
John,
all right?
If you think I'm here to apologise for the chronic failure of the Labour leadership to represent the people that it was set up to fight for,
I'm glad to hear
you're in for a bit of a disappointment.
To hear it.
And the fact... But the reality is, if you look at what actually UKIP voters want. The EU's not even in the top
Oh,
three
that's absolutely
issues.
ridiculous.
Well, I'm afraid that's what
absolutely ridiculous.
That's what it shows. And I'm
Absolute
someone who
nonsense.
passionately believes in the democratic right
Okay,
of
that
people.
doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make
UKIP, we
any
know
sense. It's nonsense.
that the EU is one of the things that they talk about, and we know that immigration
Emily,
is.
UKIP stand, above all else, of course, on the issue of the EU. But the polls show that on issues that affect people, UKIP voters are more interested, partly immigration, the economy, on things like housing, on health. It's not true that the European Union is one of
in UKIP, the clue again is in the title. They want our country back. They want our government and our powers, our parties,
Jon Gaunt,
to protect our borders.
When they read the small print, when they find out that Nigel Farage is saying things like the NHS could be run in the way of big businesses or with the help of big business, what happens when people start to read the small print and when they look at Westminster and they say they're all the same and UKIP's one of them now? You've got a Westminster MP.
That is always the danger. I was a punk rocker, Emily, when I was a kid, and I remember people like Johnny Rotten and Tom Robinson and people like that saying, you can shoot me if I ever became one of them. Of course, he ends up doing clover butter or something, and on the Jungle programme. Of course,
so you're
that's the
saying
case.
that UKIP could go the same way?
Of course they could. Some way they could go that way. But what they are at the moment is a refreshing alternative. And don't just make out as if they haven't got some policies. They have got policies, and their policies
do, but on that, can I go through
Trump.
what those policies are and why I think people are a bit in for a rude awakening? They want lower taxes on the rich. They want to slash the top rate of tax. They've abandoned the flat tax, which would have put a supermarket work in the same tax bracket as a multi-billionaire. They've supported the privatisation of our National Health Service, the scrapping of basic workers' rights like maternity pay. Well, they have. And that's the point. This isn't an alternative. All of the Westminster politicians...
What happens when people wake up to that?
What's interesting here is Owen is doing exactly what the establishment and the media establishment, of which, of course, he's a major part of,
and you're not a part
always wants to do, which is tell people how they should think and what they should think. Do you know what? People like you, Owen...
I agree with UKIP voters.
Can I finish? You've been doing it for too long, and you've now been exposed. Just like the rest of that establishment elite.
No, John...
People... You have not let me finish, please.
He's just ranting at me.
All right, let's not debate.
It is a debate. I'm saying that you are trying to do the same thing and say that these poor UKIP voters don't really understand. They know the core thing. One, they want their country back. Two, they want the borders protected.
All right.
Three,
last word, last word.
I agree with UKIP voters who overwhelmingly want higher taxes on the rich, which is booming like never before, want a living wage to stop working people earning their poverty day after day, who want a country which runs in the interests of working people.
They're now shouting in my ear, so I'm afraid we've got to come out. Thank you both very much indeed. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you. John. The price of oil fell below $90 a barrel.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.